Hello, everybody. Once again, here's Bharati, your host on Spirit Balance podcast. And I have again a very interesting special soul here today. His name is Kealan Harrington. And actually, he is somebody who went to big up and downs in his life, but is using that for expanding his consciousness, learning from it, and also help others to learn from it. He is writing or wrote a book, it's just a title, which is missing right now. So he wrote a book about his experiences, and what I feel it's about getting the consciousness into action. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
So, yeah, do you like to tell a little bit about your story, which lead you to writing a book, which we all will see in some months come out?
Yeah, um, where to start? So just to clarify, I never started with wanting to write a book. Okay, the funny
Mhm.
thing is that the publicist reached out to me after she heard about my story through my connection with London Real. So
Oh,
that was an interesting way for it to happen. You know, some people want to write a book.
mhm.
And I've always had it in my mind. I've got some pretty interesting stories that I thought would make for content someday, but I thought that that day was going to be in the future. So, everything started to change very rapidly in my life this year. And that was part of it, was this woman reaching out. So that's how the book came about anyway.
Hmm.
And the book it's about, it's a story lesson and an action book. So yes, it's about me and some of my history, how I did and did not deal with certain things in my life, and I guess how that shaped and molded me and brought me to a crossroads, which for me became very significant when I became a father. I have a son who's 3.5 now, and I realized an enormous amount of failure points in my life on my half and my responsibility, as well as the circumstances that I found myself in, which were establishing patterns in my life that also were not serving me very well. So there was a lot of experiences in that brought me to the decision then to undergo a running challenge, a personal challenge that I took on for myself, which was, well, it had a lot of I misunderstood some parameters of the challenge, but I ended up running 900 miles in 8 weeks,
Wow.
where I ran 100 miles every Monday for 22 and a half hours was the average running time, sometimes more. Um, and then on the 8th week, I did 200 miles together, and I ran for 46 hours and 35 minutes. And that event really started a catalyst that began to move pieces into my life that started to create a lot of change. So all that is kind of in the book, and what the story behind each event is, and the lessons I learned and had to learn the hard way and learn again, and then the actions, so that I can take somebody through a trip of my experience so that they don't have to do all the same things, and hopefully not have the same failures, in order to be able to make I don't know, an informative decision if they resonate to what I'm trying to say.
I love that very much. Actually, with doing intense sports, you have to come out amazingly out of your comfort zone, right? And behind that, there's a new space.
Yeah, well, I've
So,
got a term that says on the other side of suffering is greatness.
mhm.
I'm a
So,
believer in that.
right. How was your first time when you went over your comfort zone, and how did you feel? And didn't you want to give up and say just leave it?
With the running, yeah, definitely. So I was very underprepared for it. There's no denying that, and I knew that. I knew that even going into it, but it was something that I wanted to do for my own reasoning and mindsets. So I prepared as best as I could for it, which was a short space of time. It was 4.5 months that I took to prepare to do this, and I really underestimated the enormity of the challenge. The challenge was based off of an inspiration of mine, a man named David Goggins,
Mhm.
whom I came across on a London Real podcast. on the 22nd the 22nd of April, I think it was 2019. Um, I was sat inside in the hospital waiting room, waiting for my brother to wake up from surgery, and that has its own story. And I flicked on the podcast and I saw Brian Rose, London Real, introducing David Goggins. And when I listened to David, his background, the stories he'd been through, it resonated with me, and it gave me like a sense of success and hope that somebody who has been through what sounds like a lot of similar things that I've been through is in a place that I would wish to be in. So it acted like a light for me in a very dark time. And it just gave me the idea to set up the challenge. So I didn't have a lot of preparation going into it. I hate running. I've never professed to be a runner, nor will I still ever profess to be a runner. Strength sports was more my background and my enjoyment. So this was out of my comfort zone. And that's why I picked it, because I realized I had to take dramatic, drastic action to recondition my mind to deal with life and the uncomfort zone. So that was the reason for the running, the little prep. And then I did the first one, and I was not in good shape after it. I was really, my body was, I had the signs of concussion. My head was spinning. My feet were blistered, swollen, bruised. My shins, knees, hips, back, my neck. I had whiplash, from just the bouncing and the running, and that gave the signs of the concussion. I was having to check in with the doctors, physiotherapists, physical therapists, everything weekly. There was a huge recovery regime for me to be able to get back and do another one the following week. Like, I didn't know the following week if I'd even be able to do another one until I started running. So there was definitely a lot of moments that I wanted to give up, but we got through it. I definitely was out of my comfort zone, and we got to the end, just about.
So, do you think that a lot of problems in life that people have are there because people stick too much into their comfort zones and not going out of that? And that is the solution, part of the solution, to completely accept that and go out of it and, yeah, go in the wild.
Yeah, I firmly believe that most people, if you can imagine like a bell curve chart, you got the most people in the middle. Yeah, you've got people at the either end that are living life really badly or really well. But I think most people in the middle, I mean, if you look at census statistics and different studies, and these are all available to look online from credible universities and independent studies, the statistics overwhelmingly point that, I think the last one I saw was 86% of the world don't enjoy the job they're doing.
Oh,
So if you look at that alone, I think it's 86.6 even, but round it down.
that's
It's a
huge.
lot of people. It is huge. It's enormous, and there's many different ways that those studies are broken down then in different sections as to what quantifies whether you're enjoying life or not with regards to work, your personal life, your relationships that you nurture, your family circumstances. And all those subsidiary studies point in that direction as well. So when you think about it, people, you know, something I've learned is that kids don't do what you tell them to do. They do what they watch you do, as an example.
Mhm.
So when you look at the studies pointing at the pattern that people are in conditions that they're not happy with, um, everything is set up in a way that's almost against people. How do you break out of those patterns when the dominant thinking of your closest family, friends, culture, community, society is locked in a pattern of pretty much survival? And again, there's an extra layer that you can look on this. I used to hear people say, not to me specifically, although to me as well sometimes, but the whole thing, not everybody can be wrong, or, not everybody can be doing the wrong thing. Yes, everybody can be doing the wrong thing, and they do, and it happens very often. And if you don't know this, you need to have an in-depth look at some psychological patterns of behavior. I mean, if you go and you look at history, World War One and Two, and the Gulag Archipelago and things like that, and Stalin and what happened there. And the majority of people, it's very easy to get into a pattern where you're blindsided as to what your why in this life is and how and what you're doing to act that out. So that's how communities and people end up staying in these survival mechanisms, because that's what we have done for as long as we've been around, the 750,000 year span of even just the Homo sapien race. You do what the majority of the herd do in order to survive and just get by, which, going back before all this innovative society that we have, was just literally a loud noise comes and some animals and everybody runs. So without thinking, you go and you do it. But that similar mechanism, and it's fascinating when you look at how that carries through in the breeding and the DNA. But so yeah, look, you can. A lot of people do end up doing things that they should not do, that do not serve themselves well. And it is about getting out of the comfort zone, in my opinion, and at least when you learn to push that boundary, and as an individual that you can do it and rely on yourself, then your world starts to expand and you start to be able to break out of those patterns.
I agree. Very interesting, your history. You also spent a time with Shaolin monks. Wow. I mean, they're also not just sitting around and meditating and be happy ever after. They are also very hard workers, right? I mean, can you share about that?
Yeah, well, just to expand on that. So how that actually came about was the Shaolin monk came to me. So
Oh.
what happened was I had martial arts schools, and I had a martial arts school in this one town. And I looked out a window and I saw a Shaolin monk in the square of my town giving like a demonstration, which, was unusual. You don't see that in rural Ireland. So I go out, we get talking. He didn't have a lot of English. Ming Shen was his name. But his partner, Limon, she had quite good English, and she was involved in like film industry in China. And she had met her partner by going to the Shaolin temple to do documentaries, and they fell in love, and he decided to leave the temple, and they're traveling around the world together. And the last contact I had with them, which is a while now, but they're still traveling. So we got talking, made contact. They ended up living with me for 2 months. We trained together, talked about our different ideas of life. He was very into the Taoism as well, and different types of Chinese philosophies, and really branched out of even just strict Shaolin. It taught me an awful lot, and it's a time of my life that I was very grateful for. It was definitely some insights that I needed at that time to, I suppose, garner some strength to stay working through the things that I had to work through, and were still to come in my future.
Uh-huh.
So that was my connection to that man.
Great. So, how was the time in with the Shaolin monk?
Yeah, well, do you know, it's one of those experiences that you think about Shaolin monks and you understand that there's a lot of meditating, which there was a lot of meditating,
Mm.
and understanding why those meditations took place. I mean, back then that was my first introduction to meditation. I was thinking, yeah, you just sit here, and then he had very little English. So he was learning English as I was like learning his sign language. And so, I mean, the whole experience was unique because it was two humans on the same page up here in our mind,
Mhm.
but not with language. So we had to communicate through action and being present in the moment. So it was a really unique experience. And then on the other side, I taught him how to drive a car and do like, stunt driving, because I had high performance cars for my own entertainment, you could say. We had a private land, and I used to like do all this trick driving and all that stuff. So I would
Oh.
teach him how to do that. So he never ever drove a car in his life. So I would teach him that, and it was just it was a meeting of two very different worlds, and I'm sure we both took a lot of interesting, fond experiences out of it on an individual basis.
Wow, I love that very much. I mean, I met some yogis in India who never saw a computer before and showed them a computer. So I can a little bit imagine, but showing
Yeah,
him how to trick drive a car, it's really kind of
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, yeah. There's definitely a lot of funny moments in it. Anyway, I think would have made for some good movie scenes.
Right. Yes. Actually, you also go for the Guinness Book of the Records and with a very interesting method. So please tell us about that. And because that has for sure to do with really going super much out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to put it. Um, yeah, so through the experience of doing the running and networking with people, I ended up meeting a man named Marcel Hoff, who's the brother of Wim Hof, the Iceman. And Marcel and Wim Hof developed the Hof method together over 30 years. Um, and it's kind of an incredible eye-opening experience when I first started the whole thing. But what was really interesting to me is, I studied applied sciences and the biology and the chemistry behind the mechanism of the method and the studies that were done, etc. That's what I really found interesting. You get a lot of people that might tell you something like meditation or like, I don't know, meridian lines, chakra, healing, things like that. And look, what puts a lot of people off of it all is if they can't understand the methodology behind this,
Yes.
and if it's tangible in a way that just might even seem, what's the word, contradictive in the information of its layout and explanation. Whereas for me, it was backed up heavily in a way that I could understand in my language and my world, and being able to open my mind up and start to look at things through a different lens. So the Hof method is a series of breathing techniques and exposure to cold endurance in order to, well, do about a multitude of things, but simply put, reconnect to your innate nature, activate parts of your brain to stimulate physical, neurological responses, that are just beneficial for your mental health, your physical well-being. It's endless. For anybody interested, if you look up the Hof method, or you look up Marcel Hof or Wim Hof, and you look at the YouTube clips and the university studies and all the things that are done in it, I could spend the next hour explaining it all, But it's huge. And when I took on the methods and started implementing it into my own lifestyle and well-being, it just benefited it hugely. It's like training smarter instead of harder. And I noticed huge improvements in other areas of my life outside of my training. So we ventured on our experience of getting to become more friends and talking about the future and things to do. And I had Marcel Hoff on my podcast on my channel, Going the Ultra Mile. And we were getting to the end, and Marcel decides to ask me, would I take up a challenge under the principles and teaching of the method? Now, we had talked about some things peripherally, possibilities. So I thought I knew what was coming, but I didn't realize what was coming. I thought maybe a swimming challenge because we talked about stuff like that. So instead, he said, would I attempt to break the record for the longest time with full body contact in the ice?
Wow.
So that's an interesting challenge. That record stands at 1 hour 53 minutes 2 seconds or
What,
something.
1 hour in full ice? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. So are you not getting sick by that? Or,
and
is that
we'll find out.
important? So you have to train step by step, right? You have to prepare.
Yeah,
You cannot
yeah,
just go
yeah.
into
So
it for 1 hour and sit there. So,
yeah, no, there's preparation. Now, if you look at my past and my history, I don't prepare for things very well, and I still do them. So no,
okay.
so I think with a little bit of preparation, it's going to be successful.
Is there a special breathing technique connected to it? Because I know that from the yogis, from the pranayama, that I know, my guru I met, he can, he always walks barefoot, for example, and he walks also in the Himalayas in snow barefoot, and he has some pranayamas and secret kriyas he cannot teach to the masses. And there he can even melt snow. So is that something like that? You also getting into it and through the breathing, getting the nadis activated, or is it different?
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. So as as an individual decides to take on these various studies, either through Taoism, the Shaolin, yogis, Buddhism, all sorts of different practices. Essentially, it's a fundamental. The basis is manipulating your body's system to achieve a result, and doing that by creating the physical changes that you're looking to create, whether it's increasing your core temperature slightly, raising various types of hormone levels in your body to battle X, Y, Z, whatever you're looking for. And then I would view whether it's the breathing technique, whether it's something learned from yoga or whatever, they're just different tools to access the same job and maybe carry it out a different way. So fundamentally, I think it's like saying martial arts. What's martial arts for? It's to defend yourself. But then how you do it, boxing, kickboxing, karate, judo, aikido, and it boils down to the same thing. And probably on an individual level, you then have to take into account what works for an individual. Some people physiologically built a certain way with certain thought patterns. Judo or jujitsu might work better for them. Somebody else, it might be more kickboxing or taekwondo style. And again, in similar fashion, when it comes to your consciousness about your health and what is the result you're looking for, it's a recycling of the same information, just presented in a different manner.
Right. And God just didn't give us a mind and a soul. He also gave us a body. So I personally think this connection is very important, that the soul energy can really come into this physical body. And so we see that in your case, in other people too, when once you start to do the work also with your body, something is changing also, in the consciousness and is manifesting in that. So what is the biggest difference you see from your life some years ago until you walked that path?
Wow, I'm still on the path anyway.
You're
Um,
always on the path, right?
yeah, well, sometimes very shaky. Um, the biggest difference, look, you said a lot of things there about, and I like to go into this to clarify people. So you used words like energy and consciousness and stuff like that, and a not a problem, but a misconception that has transpired by the majority of the masses. The understanding is they've become like buzzwords that people don't understand what is meant behind them. So, and I was one of these people, by the way, which is why I'm saying this.
Oh,
You hear things like energy, consciousness, and
okay.
I used to roll my eyes and go, "Oh Jesus, what are they talking about?" And it used to hurt my head. Now, you've got two things here. You have a lot of people that use the words and they don't actually know what they mean. They're using the words to point at a concept that
Ah,
they understand the concept and that it exists, but not how the work is carried out to do it. And then you have other people who like me used to hear the words and don't really care what the answer is. It just made your head hurt because you didn't believe in it, right?
right.
So the things that I learned to answer the question, and it connects the gap between these two worlds. There's a sense of feeling that you get on the other side of suffering or going through an event or a trauma or an experience that does not serve you well. And a lot of people, I think, externalize that success and offload the responsibility to something outside of themselves, a relationship, a person, the pursuit of material things, finances, and so on. So when you end up in a situation that all that is removed from you, or you're damaged, or you're hurt, or you just get something that you didn't see coming, like a death or a sickness, You haven't got the inner strength developed and practice to deal with that, because that is a skill. It is a skill to learn how to deal with things in life that are troublesome. And a lot of people, again, not everybody, but a lot of people expect that life is all to be happy. Now, I'm not trying to sound negative. I am all for having great moments in your life, but it is not an expectancy. If that's your expectancy, then you're going to have a very rough time, because there is a lot of trouble in the world, and there's a lot of things that happen that are out of your control, and people do get sick and die, and all sorts of awful things that happen in the world. So if your expectancy is to be happy, you go upside down very quickly. You know, it's like a very, very small, shallow boat in a very big ocean and rough water. However, when you go through suffering, and in my case, I do it physically to develop my mental capacity. And by developing my mental capacity, by the physical nature, when something happens, when I get a phone call that is something that hurts my feelings or upsets me, I'm able to deal with it. So when you're on about consciousness and energy and those buzzwords, to clarify them into something that people can understand, when you are connected to yourself, and I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can phrase it. When you're in understanding with yourself, when you can see patterns of behavior, people, life, you just get this, you can kind of see through the pattern. And that's what I mean by being connected to yourself. Instead
Yeah.
of being part of the problem, you end up seeing where the solution is,
Yeah.
and you can forgive other people's lack of experience, what we would call ignorance, in those moments and circumstances. And there is a sense of stillness and peace that comes over you. And again, if you want to go into it on a scientific level, you know, that will come down to certain natural endorphins and opiates released in the body, that is done because your mind has created a state that allows that process to take place. So, and then when you talk about energy, well, look, on 57 different levels, you could talk about how what you put out is what you get back in the world. You know, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And again, if you want to think of it this way, the people and the circumstances I put myself in either reflect me or are going to condition and shape me. So you could think of your energy in terms of that. So I can take it and I can focus it in a more positive area and space that's going to benefit me, my mental health, and feeling good. So the summary of all that, for me, doing the physical challenges conditions my mind in order to be able to sit with myself, because a lot of people cannot do that, in order to have control over my thoughts so that they do not have control over me, so that my happiness is in my control and that privilege is not given to anybody else, that I am doing that for the right reasons, which is for me, selfishly, you know, not to acknowledge someone else's bitterness, resentment, or inability to see things my way, and not to prove a point in an arrogant manner, to kind of do the I told you so, where I think a lot of people go wrong as well.
Mhm.
So I cultivate all that together, and that's my reason for doing it. And I think going back to like what we talked about, the different ways of doing things, I'm a combination of some modern thinking and older philosophies, and I've taken bits of the martial arts and different bits from yoga and different bits from spiritual studies and academic studies and historical studies. I've put it all together to create a picture that allows me to make sense of this world as I navigate my way through it. And it's like trying to walk through a minefield with clown shoes on sometimes, and it can be hard, but that's the best way that I've put myself together, so that at least I can contribute the best way I can, with the world that I'm supposed to be in.
Wow. I love that so much. And, some people are really breaking. I mean, they are so breaking. They have problems. They go through situations like you did, and then they break. And that is so sad to see. I'm just some days ago, I walked by a bus station. I saw a man, and he had, just some beer with him and drinking. And I was looking at him and I was thinking, wow, what a life story. Why he has a drink at 10 o'clock in the morning here? And I feel that many people are, you know, don't know that you not can just go back on the happiness mode, but even grow from it so much if you allow to not run away from that. If you just, wow, you just go in it and it's so intense, yes, and you feel it, and yes, but you go through it, and then there's a so much bigger outcome. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big thing you're sharing here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So
Yeah.
when you actually feel that when you felt you want to write that book, so
Hmm.
you said you have some lessons in it that people don't have to go through that so much. I mean, I personally know a lot of great souls who have that same mentality, who say, oh, I went through so much, I don't want others to go through, so that's why I'm doing this work I'm doing. I mean, there are many people like that, but I love like how you put it even in very practical steps now. So what you have to integrate to not completely crash your life in order to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Well, I guess the I was on another podcast and something similar all came up, and it's but the answer I gave, and it's how I feel. If nobody buys the book, nobody buys the book. And I think the other person used something about I'm a great leader, and I said my job is not to lead. I'm not here to lead anybody. If I do, it's going to be like Forrest Gump, where one day I'll stop and people will be like, "Oh, I thought he knew what he was doing," right? So I'm not here to lead anybody. And likewise with the book, it's not going to. If you think about sales and business, the amount of people that you can get a message out there versus how it all converts down to getting a sale, the portion changes hugely.
Mhm.
So it's not like if you run an ad on TV to sell a car and 1,000 people watch the ad, 1,000 sales happen. No, you might be lucky if one sale happens.
Mhm.
So likewise, with what I'm doing with going the ultra mile and the networking that I'm doing, the podcast that I have, the book, the records, it's all about getting a message out there. The why I feel the way I feel in this world.
Mhm.
And if people can understand my why and that it's just simply to try and put things a bit better for the next generation. So take action. Don't live in misery and regret and let the pattern repeat. Take action. That's kind of there are two words that I emphasize a lot. Take
Mhm.
action so that things are that bit better for whatever's next, whoever generation, whatever world, whatever picture is going to be there. Once you figure out your why, your how and your what kind of starts to unfold by itself,
Mhm.
and people will gravitate towards that. So the more people I can deliver the why to, the more, even though the numbers get smaller, the more people I'll impact at the bottom of that funnel, that it might just maybe help change them a little bit. And I know it works because I've had it done to me. I've met some amazing people throughout my whole life. People that, I wish I listened to their advice 15 years ago, but 15 years ago I didn't. But I can remember a conversation with one man. His name is Rick Clark, Professor Rick Clark. He's a lecturer in Indiana State University in criminology, former United States Air Force and military police. And we taught martial arts all over the world together. He took me under his wing and he really helped me a lot. And that was a lot of my traveling in Germany. We go all from Munich, Bamberg, Hamburg, down to Regensburg and Bavaria. And, we've been all over Germany. And anyway, I met some incredible people by doing that. And I remember saying to Rick, I said, look, why? Why me? You know, I was a young teenager at the time. I just buried some friends. My head was not in a good place. And I couldn't see why he was putting this effort into me. And he said something basically said, Keelan, I see a lump of coal that has the potential to be a diamond, and he's under a lot of pressure. But what he also needs is a lot of polishing and knocking off the rough edges and guidance. And maybe someday you will have the experience and ability to pass it forward to the next person. And if I can leave my life knowing I made an effect positive to just one person, it's the best contribution I've made. And that really stuck with me. So I carry that through now, 15 years later. My why is the same thing. I have a message that I believe in. Doesn't have to be everybody's message. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with it. Because again, like the martial arts or like the consciousness well-being, there's different ways to go about it. There's also different messages for different people. But if my one can resonate with enough people and I get it out to a large enough audience, not only does my what and how unfold for me on my journey, but getting other people to realize that why makes their what and how unfold. And if that's it, and the world is put in just a little bit better condition, then that's all I can do, and that's all I've meant to do.
That's so beautiful. Do you know that movie, Pay It Forward?
No, but you're the fifth person to say it to me this month,
Really?
so
Oh,
I must really go watch it. Yeah, yeah. Like I've been on a few podcasts, and I wake up every morning and I get somewhere like 30, 40, 80 messages in my inbox about people who've come across this or that, and like I think 5, 6, 7 times it's come up now. So I must
that
definitely go watch it now.
yes, yes. It reminds me. Your story reminds me of that movie, and it's a really touching experience. And also how hard it is, and it's not just easy. And you might not get rewarded for it, and you might feel you're not helping, or you might even feel you're hurting. And at the end, you changed so much, and it's a really amazing movie. Yeah,
I
beautiful.
will watch it.
Yeah. So I want to know from you, Gillan, what is your now your life goals for, you know, I mean, I know you have this Guinness Book of Recording. I would love to know when that is happening, when you want to do that. And also, you know, you moved your house, but that are things in the physical. So what are your visions for the future in your life? What are you heading to now?
So the likes of the books, the world, the records, it's not, as I said, it's not about books and records. They're like micro goals along the way
Hmm.
to unfold like a success path, you know, a path that serves me well to move forward into delivering the message of my why. So my goals on a broader level, I have it written up on my vision board. It's to impact 10 million lives,
Wow.
you know, develop the going the ultra mile, my business, my kind of like the flagship of the why again. uh, I've got my podcast. I do some courses and coaching, and again, I'm fortunate that I can do it on my terms. You know, you get a lot of people that they sell courses every day of the week, and everybody's a guru, and keyboard warriors are like digital course scam. You know, I don't want to be one of those people. I don't need to sell them at all, which is good. It's not my sole reliance. I do a lot of behind the scenes business with other businesses, contributing these different skill sets and visions that I have to their business and working in collaboration. So there's a couple of exciting collaborations coming up in the future with some um, high profile people. And yeah, just keep focusing on that course, that path is what I mean, you know, just keep focusing, getting it out there and growing what I have organically so that it meets the needs of the right people, you know, and as long as I keep an eye on a North Star, the general direction, whatever else starts coming. But I've got my solid steps in place, and we will see what unfolds off of that. So books, some freezing cold temperatures, some big ultra runs, and again the people that I've met by beginning the execution of those events has been really interesting. Getting to know some really interesting people and being invited to do some speaking engagements when the borders open. So it's the start of the next chapter.
What are the most exciting people you met and where you got invited?
Ooh. Um. Bum ba bum 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 bum. Whole range of people. It's kind of funny. You start thinking, or at least I did, when a journey like mine started, and you come from a rural community where if you don't like fishing, football, farming, you have very little that you can do. And let's just say anybody from a small community knows what small communities can be like, and it's hard to get out from under your labels and to be able to see the world.
Mhm.
And what people have to remember is this: everybody is an expert and thinks that they know something very well, but
Mhm.
for all the familiarity that you have with buildings and tarmacadam roads, there's more parts of the world that do not have roads or buildings. So just because what you see from a lens here does not represent the whole world. So coming from that community and growing up conditioned to be concerned with what other people think, I never thought when I opened my phone and I saw a podcast with Brian Rose and David Goggins that I would now be connected with those people. I
Mhm.
can now can speak to Brian on a regular basis.
Oh.
Um, Another good friend of mine, well, more like started off as like a leader and a mentor. He's an ex special forces officer from the SAS in England. He's the guy that's friends. He's a good acquaintance of David Goggins. Friends and got him the likes of his ASICS sponsorship deal through a conversation. So meeting like these, it's not about famous people, by the way. It's because not all of these people are necessarily what you'd call celebrities, nor is it about celebrity status. But it's
Right.
just really cool. It's really cool to get to meet these people and network with their friends.
Mhm.
You take the likes of Brian, is good friends with the likes of Grant Cardone, who knows Floyd Mayweather, and Dana White, and Kevin Hart, the actor. And then I used to watch David Knapp Fisher on a TED Talks that inspired me when I watched his story about his son being sick with a muscle atrophy disease and how not to procrastinate in your life. And now I'm in contact with David, and he's coaching me every week to harness my speaking skills and to be able to become a better communicator. And then
Oh.
you got Dan Pena, the $50 billion man, or he's known as the $1 trillion man. He's a he's like a character born out of the wildest American dreams and made 450 million out of oil, and then set up a high performance coaching business and was friends with Donald Trump and did all that stuff.
Oh.
So when and then it networks into another. Just to tell you how small the world is, a very good friend of mine who actually lives down in Bavaria, and he is the member of an elite police unit down there. He did security for Bill Clinton when he was a US president. So very quickly, I've noticed how my world has started to become expanded and then small at the same time. Some people from the old are crossing over to the new. Because I was talking to that friend. I was like, yeah, you'll never guess. And, because I'm excited because I'm meeting new people, and they're people that I used to see on a screen. And I used to think I'll never be one of them, or I'll never be able to create the same, not success, like, impact, create impact and deliver the message. And now these people are part of my network, and it's expanding. So I remember talking to this friend, and I was like, yeah, you'll never guess, blah blah. And he's got his Bavarian accent. Yeah, yeah, I did security for Bill Clinton when he was there. I was like, what? How did I miss this? When? What? Oh, and then we got talking. So it's pretty cool. You know, the world starts becoming smaller in that regard.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Not to mention, by the way, just to finish, because we were on about the ice thing. I can remember
Yes.
being 7 years old. I think I was seven, watching Wim Hof do the underwater ice swim, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that's just so inspirational." And you know, you're seven, and your imagination is running wild, and you're like, "Oh man, gee, I don't know, would I ever?" Could I ever do things like that? And now I've grown up into an adult and I now know these people, the same people that I saw on TV when I was a kid, Or I used to be inspired by Arnold Schwarzenegger and the likes of Sylvester Stallone, as every young boy is. And I did a lot of strongman and competing in strongman. And Eddie Hall is the 2017 World's Strongest Man. He's from the UK. He's now in partnership with Arnold Schwarzenegger for some of his stuff. And I
Mhm.
remember seeing Eddie when he was 19 and he started strongman and he had a big mouth saying, "I'm going to be the world's strongest man." And everybody said, "Yeah, yeah, 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 whatever. You're so arrogant." And then nearly 10 years later to the day, he won the world's strongest man. And he was the first man in history to deadlift 500 kilograms. He broke the world record by 37 and a half kilos at the time, which is like someone breaking Usain Bolt's record by nearly a second. That's huge at that level. So I've been fortunate to meet and associate and get to know a lot of hugely inspirational people that have done incredible things.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's cool having been a very young child and started to see those people on TV and then growing up and networking into that world. But I will say this to anybody listening: it's not about the people. Everybody's idea of success is measured in a different metric. If
Yes.
your idea of success is to be the world's strongest man, then you're successful. If your idea of success is to have $1 trillion, then you're successful. If your idea of success is to live peacefully up a mountain, that is successful. Or to be the best father or mother or sister that you can be. It's not about these grand ideas.
Mhm.
It's just, does it line up with your why? And if your why attracts the people that are the most inspirational to why you developed your why, then you're successful.
Right. I love that very much because I really feel that as a society, we have to come into it more and more. Because right now, there are many people who are just putting things in boxes. You're only successful if you are that. You're only successful if you are that. I mean, I know yogis who are so successful in their souls, but they're not realized. Nobody can even understand when people see them. They think, he's just this person sitting on the street. So it's very interesting, on what level, who has success on what level and where.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
and it is hugely, it's just down to the eye of the beholder and what they're
Right.
looking at. I mean, and again, I personally would love to live in a mountain recluse from people and just enjoy nature and be off grid. I,
Mhm.
I experienced that to a degree back when I lived in that cabin and I enjoyed it very much. But unless your whole life is orchestrated around carrying that out,
Mhm.
you've got certain inevitable essential needs that you have to sustain that don't line
Yes.
up with that world. And for
Absolutely.
example, I've got a son who's in this world and his mother and his siblings and who choose not to live that way, for example. So you have to find a balance between sustaining your needs and living in line with your why. And then sometimes that just requires, business was not something I was particularly interested in. That's the wrong word, but I because I understood how I could create impact and what the why in my life was, I then
Mhm.
started to learn all these other tools that could help construct that in the most beneficial way
Mhm.
to sustain the need to live here and how to live, and
Mhm.
then carry through the message so that I can live at least happier from time to time, other than living a 9 to 5 job that I don't want.
Right,
So the
right.
metric is individual.
Right. And I think personally, there's a magic. If you feel that fire of something, you really feel like, yes, and your why is, I think that's a very important thing because I know a lot of people who have some goals but not a why. So that is also will come in your book, right? Like the how to structure yourself
Yeah.
to get into that. Perfect.
Yes.
So how can people reach you in case if they want to have a coaching from you or do a
Yeah.
course with you?
Yeah. So my all my presence on the internet can be found by typing in going the ultra mile. So GOING mile MILE. So it's punned off of going the extra mile, because of ultra running. It was called the ultra mile,
So,
and you'll find that on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Facebook is where things are most prevalent for me at the moment. We're
mhm,
expanding the other channels and Googling my name. And then you've got, Kealan Harrington, which I'm
mhm.
sure if they're listening to the podcast, they can find in the description, KEALAN. And then going the ultramile.net or .com will take you to the website. So I'm always happy for people to reach out because you have a conversation and you never know what is the result of a conversation.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Gilan, for your time. And I also see how small the world is because before we recorded, I told you I had a very interesting guest in the Darkness Retreats here from the US. His name is Aubrey Marcos, and he just came from Wim Hof. He just came from Poland, did
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
with other influencers, and he just came. And so he did this Darkness Retreat here. He's a really interesting soul. And so then that was the first time I really heard more about him. And then I read about him and saw some videos. Now we have a small ice bath in the garden. I mean, I don't do that to the extent you do. I'm happy if I'm just like a minute in, I have to admit, but I'm working
yeah,
on it. But it's really interesting how this dots connecting and how
yeah.
you.
The world becomes a small place, and when you have that why figured out, people are attracted to you,
Mm-hmm.
which connects those dots, and it's really powerful.
It's interesting. Yes. Thank you so much again, and happy to stay in touch and to read your book once it's out. And I'm sure we will hear from you. Okay.
I'll be letting you know.
Thank you. So everybody, I hope you enjoy and take care. Hear you soon.